Grateful you are with us this hour, all dedicated to those 98 people lost in Champlain Towers South 2 years ago this weekend. Parents, children, grandparents, loved ones, you will hear from their families of the catastrophe our community has endured over the years. A few have prompted change, big changes in the way everyone in South Florida lives and operates. The collapse of that Surfside condo by the sea is one of those. New laws and regulations, new concerns, safety concerns, financial concerns. We will examine all of that this hour. The collapse of Champlain Towers South laid bare the consequences of neglected signs that an aging building needs attention and money. Florida lawmakers responded to that with a motherload of changes, first in special session and then in this past session to tweak the changes when the consequences to homeowners became apparent. State Representative Vicki Lopez, Republican from Miami, was the State House lead on that bill. She is right here with us at the table today. Vicki, it is great to have you. We're for everyone should know we are first name basis kind of gals. Okay.
We are indeed.
Okay, great to have you with us. Well, of course, we're going to hear from the families. We're going to hear a lot about it, but really the headline is those state changes are going to be affecting right now everybody. First, the sledgehammer of changes, and then this session, you and your colleagues kind of tweaked to find a balance between safety and affordability, and that has to be tough to do.
It was, in fact, I think, very tough to do, and I think there's much more work to be done. I think this is just the beginning of putting a little bit of clarity, transparency, and giving some direction to those that are, in charge of actually implementing this law.
So you represent Miami, Coral Gables, Key Biscayne. You represent a lot of condo dwellers.
I do. Actually, the majority of my, the eastern coastlines, whenever you look at the coastlines, you're looking at condos.
And what have you heard from them?
I think everyone is concerned. I think there's confusion, so I think that this coming year we're going to have to do something about educating condo boards. There's confusion about, what is expected, when is it expected, what do condo owners have to pay, which I think is the largest piece of this pie.
100%. And I want to let you know that later in this hour we're going to talk to a condo attorney, David Haber, who I talked a little bit about with him just in preparation, and he was talking about homeowners associations. Yes. Are just in a position now of being walloped with a financial future and having to make decisions as elected boards that they've always had to make, and probably in many cases, as in Champlain Towers South, didn't make those right decisions.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of Senate Bill 154 that we passed this year, is to really emphasize the need for a structural integrity reserve study, which tells you what your financial assessments are going to have to be. And I think it's going to be rather shocking to many people, especially since many condo boards waived assessments over the years.
Yeah. Let's go through the initial changes in special session, the first round of changes, really focused on engineers going into the buildings, making those inspections, lowering the threshold of years from 40-year inspections to 30 and in some cases 25 on the coast. And then a couple of other things that they did really needed to be changed by you and your colleagues because it just wasn't doable.
Right.
And one of those things were they found the amount of inspectors and engineers just weren't available to do that.
Yeah, so we finally decided that it can be under the jurisdiction of a certified architect or engineer, but they're able now to hire a team of what we call design professionals. I still think there's going to be a problem with that. I'm hearing now from architects and engineers who are saying, look, we don't want to take on the liability. This should really be structural engineers. And so, there is that question now of who will do these things, especially since it's the license of the licensed architect and engineer that's at stake.
Right, and so what's the timeline that you're looking at?
So the timeline is that any building that's reached 30 years of age by December 31st of 2024 must have already completed its milestone inspection by that date.
In Champlain Towers South, this has been in the news for 2 years. I know so many people, especially a really engaged audience that we have that watch this program, know all about what we call the Morabito report. That's the engineer for Champlain Towers South, who in 3 years before the collapse in 2018 gave a report outlining the structural problems and outlining the deficiencies and putting in the report it needs to be addressed. And we know what happened when it wasn't in time. So what now, how does the law address an engineer or a report that says those things?
So the milestone inspection has to be sent to our local building officials. And if they find after the phase 1 that there's need for a phase 2 milestone inspection, which means there is some structural issues, they will have only 90 days, between 90 and 120 days to get a building permit to fix it. If not, they can shut them down as an unsafe structure.
And so the accountability is built into this.
It is, it is.
And what have you heard from your constituents?
So my constituents are much more concerned about the financial impact, quite frankly. I mean, I think
Than the safety?
Well, I think that they know that in Miami-Dade County since 1975, we've been doing building recertifications. So we're just lowering now the threshold from 40 to 30.
But let me just stop you there for a moment. In Miami-Dade County, you've been doing 40-year certifications, and yet you had a building collapse, which was just becoming under its 40-year. But still, you have one. I know just by virtue of the reporting that we've done, when in the last 2 years, early on in late 2021, you had all of these condo dwellers looking at their building that might have been 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and a crack in the ceiling of the garage. And in fact, a lot of buildings were all of a sudden cleared of people. Where is that fine line between knee-jerking and really addressing problem?
Well, so I think the 30-year is going to make a big difference. If Champlain Towers had been certified at 30 years, they would have found that there were some significant structural issues, and they would have had to have fixed it. I think the problem there was that there was no financial reserves to do so. And because they'd been waiving financial reserves, which was a huge problem in South Florida, as more retirees moved here,
right, of course,
boards were less inclined to want to hit someone in a fixed income. And now, unfortunately, we're going to have to play catch up, which is going to be really very painful.
So let's talk about that fixed income issue.
Yes.
As we play catch up, using your words, what do you forecast, in your expert opinion, with what I know you are deep in the weeds with this?
Deep.
Forecast for us in a community where affordable housing is the number one issue and challenge. What are people going to be facing?
So I think because there's a sort of double whammy going on here, property insurance is hitting condo owners as well. Even in my own condo, we went from $400,000 a year to $1.1 million a year.
Wow!
Right. So that's just property insurance assessment. That's hitting all homeowners, if you will. However, for condo owners, they're now being hit with a financial assessment from the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. So we're going to have to find a way to figure out how do we give maybe fixed income, retirees a little bit more of a glide path. But we can't give them so much that by the time those structural components get to their end of their useful life, that there isn't any money to fix them or replace them.
So I think our next guest may have an idea about that. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman-Schultz is up next, and we're going to talk a little bit about a bill she filed that is aiming toward the financial component. But just in the short time that we have left, you have colleagues on both sides of the aisle who are really unified. This is one of those bipartisan issues. What do you foresee? The laws are what they are. There are more to come. What do you see still to come?
I'm actually hopeful that we'll start mirroring some of the Miami-Dade County's ordinance. This particular bill that we passed is only for condo buildings. We have not yet said that apartment buildings or commercial buildings are safe or unsafe at the state level.
Oh, so this isn't for any building?
No.
That's new. I'm just learning that. I wonder if that's well known.
So my meetings with the county officials has sort of enlightened me to the fact that I'm just focused on condos because I'm specifically looking at what happened at Champlain Towers. But we have hundreds of thousands of apartment buildings throughout the state. I don't know if they're safe. So that's the next question I'll be asking as we move into this session.
This is monumental.
It is. It is.
State Rep Vicki Lopez, always great to have you on the program.
Thank you so very much.
And I know you're always in touch with us about this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.